Welcome back to Thrive Dialogues. These are conversational micro-learnings with proven leadership experts that'll equip you to succeed in today's turbulent times. This is an offering from my company, Selflimiting, LLC. Today, I'm delighted to have my dear friend, Sandy Stosz, who has had an illustrious career, being one of the first women to graduate from the Coast Guard Academy and staying 40 years in the Coast Guard and retiring as a Vice Admiral. She has now published an amazing book. She is a leadership expert, and today we're going to be talking about a really important topic, the power of being different. First of all, thank you so much, Sandy, for being with me today.
Oh, thank you, Sarah, for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, Sandy, you and I have both been one of the first women to serve in leadership roles in the U.S. military. What was it like for you in the Coast Guard?
Well, I have to say, before I even entered the Coast Guard, I came in 1978, I was really fortunate to have been raised as the oldest of 4 children with 3 younger brothers. And we were all kind of about the same age, within 4 years of each other. And that really helped because all the boys in the neighborhood were over all the time. And I got used to being the only girl. So I won't deny it, though. Even when I entered the Coast Guard Academy, entered the Coast Guard, it was hard being the first or only. I was the 3rd class of women at the Coast Guard Academy, so I could never escape being the first because you promote according to your time in service. And I felt from the very beginning that I was representing all women as one of the first, not just me, but everything I did when I was in the spotlight. It was like, okay, it's not just Sandy Stosz, it's all women who are being looked at and being judged based on what I do. So those high expectations really put stress on you. They put stress on me. And I really subconsciously developed a mindset that I was never good enough. Mm-hmm. And then there was media attention when I would go to be the first or only woman on a ship, on the pointy end of the spear unit like that, leading men. It took the focus off the crew and the mission. And the Coast Guard has amazing missions and amazing people. And it amplified what I thought was an already awkward situation where I just wanted to be another Coast Guard member, not a woman Coast Guard member. But eventually I realized I couldn't escape being the first and decided to embrace it. And that just kind of came with maturing. You know how sometimes you're just in the shower, you're taking a jog, and you have a revelation. So I was probably 28 years old when I had been the first or only several times over and just said, hey, I better embrace this. I'm never going to escape it. It's making me miserable. I'm putting too much pressure on myself. And I'm not being as good a leader as I can be because of all this pressure. So I believe that was my turning point when I decided that this was not going to be a burden. And I discovered the power of being different.
Oh, I love that. It reminded me of course, I was in the 4th graduating class at West Point Women, and that first class, I could still remember all the media attention they endured, so to speak, when they graduated, and how that created jealousy of this male-dominated academy, right? I mean, for every 1 woman, there were 10 guys. And so then they had to deal with the jealousy, and it made it even more difficult when they should be happy that they made it through the place, right? So I understand that you experienced that over and over. As you were the only woman to serve on some of the ships you were assigned to, what was the biggest challenge you faced in being the only woman in an all-male crew?
Well, it's not what you would think. And I've had this question many times over. Wow, what was it like being the only woman out there for days, months, or weeks on end with all those men? And I'm sure that people who ask that question think I'm going to say, oh, it was tough because the men didn't believe in me and hard on me. No, it was the spouses of all those men. So when I first reported aboard the Coast Guard cutter Clover, 180-foot medium endurance cutter out of Eureka, California, the year was 1985, and I was coming on as the first and only woman, and I was serving as the 3rd in command, the operations officer. And I had to break the ice with the guys and kind of help them understand what to expect from a woman, because even though they had mothers and sisters and daughters, a lot of them just didn't know how to be in the workplace with a woman. But I was at a ship's party like a month into my new job here in Eureka, and I'm talking to some of the spouses of these 50 men on the ship. And I was telling one of the women, oh, your husband is a great guy. He's a really hard worker. You should be proud of him. And she just kind of like snarled at me. She was jealous, thinking that I had an interest in her husband. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how could it be so misinterpreted that I was just trying to give her a compliment about her husband? So I realized that it was hard to be the only woman because the spouses had animosity. They were unsure of you. Well, what I learned from that was when I took command of my first command I had several years later, it was all men. Once again, I was the only woman. I immediately invited all the spouses down to the ship for a spouses tea where we'd all have cake. I even baked cookies, and oh my gosh, what a difference. I was able to earn their trust and show them that I was a real person, and I had no problems from then on. But I had to learn where to look. Where my blind spot was people of my own gender made it the hardest on me, more than any man could have. And then on that same ship, there was one night that I was on the watch, probably, a month again in my time on there. And I was on there for 3 years. So in the first month or so, I'm standing watch at nighttime up on the bridge or the pilot house. And one of my guys on the watch says to me, ma'am, because we're really happy you're on board, because we don't like, a lot of the guys on the mess deck where we eat, with gross language and all this stuff, but we can't say anything or we'll look like sissies. But now that you're here, we can say, you can't do that or say that because Miss Stosz is on board. So they were using me as an excuse to clean up the act of the crudeness of an all male crew. And so the next morning I thought, wow, I didn't realize that. So the next morning I kind of walked down that passageway, the hallway, I'm heading to the mess deck, and I hear a guy cussing. And I even remember who it was. It was Kenny, one of my guys, and the guys who work for me. And I said, Kenny, would you say that in front of your mom or your daughter? He says, oh, no, ma'am. I says, well, you can't say it in front of me either. And all the guys laughed. And I said it in a way that wasn't going to make Kenny lose face, and I wasn't going to be banging on him. I did it to win everybody over. So I had to know how to interact with the men to earn their trust and respect. But it gave me power to understand that being the only woman and being different was something that I could use to my advantage to make the whole ship and crew better, not just my situation better.
Isn't that awesome? I mean, the idea that many of the men didn't like that kind of culture or vulgarity or whatever, but they appreciated it when you had things raise the standards, so to speak. Very nice. So I know that there's going to be women listening to this that, they're working in a male-dominated kind of environment. What can they do to not only be heard, but listened to in a workplace where they feel like they truly are a minority?
Yeah, and you said the operative words there. They feel like they're a minority, and they are a minority, but it's how you feel. So you have to build the confidence to go along with your competence. And often we women are very competent, and the men understand that, and our supervisors realize that. But somehow we don't project the confidence to go with that competence. And they're two sides of the same coin. You can't uncouple them. So you've got to learn to believe in yourself and be yourself. And that takes time. It took me years. And I wasn't patient with myself, but I offer up to other women, be patient with yourself. So realizing that as the background, you need to be prepared, be professional, and be purposeful when you're in a workplace, say a meeting, whether it's a Zoom or one of those big conference tables. You don't just show up and expect everybody to, include you. You've got to be deliberately prepared, professional, and purposeful. How do you do that? Being prepared. You get a hold of the agenda and you take a look. What are the topics? Where do I have expertise? Where can I be ready to interject a point? Who are the men who are in this meeting? Is there any woman there that might be an ally? Is there a man who I know who's my office, next office over, who I trust and he likes me? Can that be an ally I could maybe count on? So being prepared, knowing the audience, knowing the group, knowing the topics. You aren't going to succeed if you aren't prepared. And be professional. So how you project yourself, how you present yourself, what are you wearing? How do you sit? And I think all that matters in presenting yourself as somebody who commands the attention. So the men don't just look right past you. A lot of people will sit back in their chairs, even just be present and professional. And then third, be purposeful.
Mm.
So you want to make sure that you're deliberately looking at where you can interject, because the conversation is going to be going all over the place. If it's like the ones I've been in with mostly men, and the men wait till one guy's last word is out, and another guy jumps right in, and you're a woman wanting to wait back and be respectful and then wait for a pause. If you wait for a pause, you might never have a chance to say anything. So you really have to be purposeful and be looking for where you can interject. And if it's not in your comfort zone, you need to kind of change your thoughts about that, because the men are going to be jumping in. And so I think to some extent, we women have to be ourselves and believe in ourselves, but you also have to become the person you need to be to achieve your goals. So it's a little bit of that compromise there. And that's the being purposeful part. So be prepared, be professional, and be purposeful.
I like that. You know, it's really important for women to find mentors and allies in male-dominated workplaces. Can you give some suggestions on how they might do that?
Yes, I have lots of thoughts on this, and many of them are in my book. I'll summarize here in a very small snippet. So first, because there's lots of stuff you could say. You recognize that men can be willing and very capable of being your ally. And allies and mentors don't have to look like you. So if you limit yourself, self-limiting behavior is what I've seen be the demise of more women than anything else. More women who haven't succeeded in the workplace, in my experience, have self-limited as opposed to a man holding them back. So look around and recognize mentors don't have to look like you. Second, don't wait for somebody to reach out to you. Maybe there's a reason why the men in the workplace aren't reaching out. Maybe they're hesitant because they might think they're doing something inappropriate. You might perceive it wrong. Look at the Me Too movement that I think put a chilling effect on some of the workplace interactions that could have benefited women. So you need to reach out and connect with the men in your workplace, and not just those above you. There is so much power in peers and near peers. There's so much power in subordinates. Subordinates can be your stealth mentors and allies if you open your mind to it. And I'll tell you a story about that. I was assigned as the first woman to command the icebreaker Katmai Bay on the Great Lakes in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, 140-foot ship, crew of about 15 men. And it was all over the news that I was going to be coming up to the Great Lakes and first woman to command a ship on the Great Lakes. And I was working as the military aide to the Secretary of Transportation at the time, our service secretary. He came. I thought, oh, that's nice. It's great to have so much attention on the Coast Guard, because the Coast Guard's a small piece of the big national puzzle. And so unbeknownst to me, though, my boss, who was a very senior man, he had responsibility for not just my ship, but other units in Michigan and along Lake Superior. After the whole change of command ceremony, he took me aside and said, "You're just the secretary's fair-haired golden girl. We'll see how long you last." And he proceeded to make my life miserable. And he didn't think women belonged. And he didn't like the fact that he thought I was only in command because I had been the aide to the secretary, the service secretary, and that I was not competent, that I was just there as a token woman. Oh, that was hard, having to prove yourself time and time again. But a man on the ship who was junior to me, because they all were, this was a man who was a chief petty officer. He went up to that captain one day and said, "Captain, you better stop picking on our skipper, because she's doing a good job and you're sowing doubt and discontent amongst the crew. The morale's eroding. They can't figure out why you're on her case all the time." And so, to the captain's credit, he pulled back. My boss pulled back, and my life got better. I had my resignation letter written before that, just waiting to drop that letter because it was just miserable. And thank goodness I persevered and didn't do that, because of that ally, a junior person who I never knew about that for years, or maybe months. I can't remember, but he and I are best friends to this day. He's out of the Coast Guard, I'm out of the Coast Guard. But on December 1st of this year, I'm going down to attend his daughter's wedding And Hannah was only 2 months old, 2 years old, when I first met this guy, Dave, on the Katmai Bay back in 1990. So it's a lifetime friendship that started with him being my ally as a junior person.
Oh, what a great story. It reminds me of some of the warrant officers that I had working for me as a young lieutenant over in Germany. And to the point of, we are different. I really relied on them. I asked for their advice. I trusted them, and they performed exceptionally well, which gave me the confidence to do my job and then to appear competent as I was learning this vast new system that we had introduced into the Army at the time for logistics. And I just, once I had their confidence, it seemed to build my confidence. So I think you're really hitting on something here that often we don't think about, how important our subordinates or our coworkers can be in encouraging us and teaching us the ropes, so to speak.
Mm.
Another point is this whole idea of what leaders can do to create workplaces where women feel included and valued, so that they can reach their full potential. Do you have any ideas and concepts that you could relate to the audience as from a leadership point of view?
Yes, I do. And I love that you've built up to this, where we've talked a lot about the individual. And I got to say, life is your life to live, and nobody can take that away from you. And we've talked a lot about what you can do as an individual to create your own power, to develop the confidence to go with your competence. But there's a huge component that is the employer, to create the workplace, set the conditions and the expectations for the workplace that ensures every voice is heard.
Mm.
So in my experience, the best workplace climates are those where everybody's voice is heard, listened to, and considered. That levels the playing field. It's not just the extrovert that's always got their hand up. The introverts are sought out. The people with different personalities and perspectives are asked, even if they're not confident enough to raise their hand. So I think a good boss, a good corporation company will make sure that every voice is heard. They'll deliberately reach out to subordinates to schedule periodic performance review meetings and require everyone to do that, so that you're having every couple of months a sit down to manage expectations, so there aren't misplaced expectations and people's voices aren't getting heard and concerns aren't getting elevated. And I think the bosses need to have the moral courage to deal with the people in the workplace. And there are going to be those people who aren't pulling their share, who are misbehaving, not performing. And we all know these people, they're just on the edge, testing the boundaries of how far they can go with a pat on the back, or not showing up for a meeting, having their camera off all the time on their Zoom, if that's the venue where the meetings are happening. And they're never held accountable. And the people who are working for the same pay or putting it on the line every day, the Great Resignation, in my mind, is a lot of it about those good employees bolting from an organization because during the COVID times, so much behavior and lack of performance might have been tolerated. And the people who have it to give are going someplace where they're going to be heard, listened to, and respected. And they're going to be in a workplace where everybody is contributing at the same level, and the boss has the moral courage to make sure that that environment is equal for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. We used to call it too, this idea of management by walking around. And I know that some people are still at a disadvantage because half their workforce is working from home, or a third of their workforce is. But you can still do check-ins. You can do tiny little Zoom calls with people to see what they're doing, or the boss is observing during the Zoom call, to your point, the video conference call. Are they engaged? Are they got their arms folded? How to get them re-engaged, and saying that's the standard. You expect to have your camera on, you expect to engage in this conversation. Well, I just want to thank you, Sandy, for giving us your wisdom and your insight with all your incredible experience. Would you please tell people, if they want to know more about you or your book, where they can go, and what kind of information can you provide them?
Sure. If you like what you've heard today, and thank you, Sarah, for giving me the opportunity to share my leadership lessons, You can get much more in my book, Breaking Ice and Breaking Glass, Leading in Uncharted Waters, at my website, www.sandrastosz.com. The book's also available at any independent bookstore or Amazon. But if you go to my website, you can also sign up for my newsletter. And what that's going to do is give you every 2 months, every 2 weeks, you're going to get a Leading with Character blog. It's going to be a leadership topic that if you like this, you'll like that too. So sign up for that and get a hold of the book. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sandy.